Good morning and welcome to our first wega breakfast of this year. So nice to have you all here. If there are some wega colleagues in the office, there are still a few seats empty, so you could also maybe join here in the room. Before we go into the main topic of today, I would also like to briefly introduce wega for the ones who might not know us that well yet. What services we provide and where we could help our customer in the projects. So we are an informatics service company with the mission to build the bridge between the business, so in our case mainly life science business and IT, and we have a really strong belief that to be able to provide sustainable digital solutions, we really need to know the business and the people of that. And so that's all of our consultants, also including partners and freelancers, really have a dual background in both sciences and IT, so that we really can build this strong foundation of this bridge. So next slide. So for our services are built on these 4 pillars of excellence, which, technique, surrounding around lab and, yeah, that's good. Okay. Technique, always. Around lab and research IT, clinical development, as well as the compliance aspect with CSV and quality assurance, and informatics solutions to bring in the technical basics overall. We kind of support the overall value chain from research, development, QC, and manufacturing. And our 360-degree services really support the end-to-end life cycle of projects. So where we can help our customer and add values is really kind of starting with strategic consultancy, understanding the roadmap and shaping the digital landscapes, with business analysis, project management support to select the right solutions and addressing the right problems to start with implementation, supporting integration, implementation generally, as well as testing. And our CSV expertise is embedded in the full cycle, so in the sense of we both support GXP and also non-GXP projects, also with an aim to support agile validation, where we built on an agile validation framework in the past few years. Additionally, also if it comes for the rollout, release planning, supporting trainings, as well as afterwards the operational part. And for bigger projects, or if needed, we also have the ability to provide organizational change management services. So really aiming for having a well-rounded overall service for our customers. So where do you find us? We have I would say approximately 110 plus consultants here in Switzerland, but we also have offices in Germany, consultants in the Netherlands, in Poland, as well as also in France since I think last year. So we can support not just here on site, but we really be at our customer whenever possible. Next one. So also for the upcoming events, that's the next chance to connect with us. We have a few events in March, April and May. And for the Digital Lab Summit, also Daniel Juchli, one of our consultants from EXP, will have a talk about lab digitalization from the bench up. And for the other events, we have a booth. So should you be there, please join us and connect with us. Then let's move on to the main topic while we're here today. I'm very excited to introduce Anke Eisenmann, who joins us. She will take us on the journey to the LabEx program. bracket open, LabEx, not in the meaning of instrument integration, I think from Mettler. That's a bit of a confusion from the name. And she will kind of show us a bit more about details about LabEx, so the kind of multi-year initiative at Roche R&D, where with the aim to replace end-of-life systems. And she will sharing some real-world lessons on how to shift from a single platform mindset to a more modern and especially modular landscape. Mm-hmm. I myself had the pleasure to work with her in the project from the very beginning. So it's really a great opportunity and a lot of learning. And it's really appreciated to also be able to join this journey and contribute really in doing that transformation. Good. Then a few words before I hand it over to you. So Anke is a senior professional with 20 years of experiences across pharmaceutical and green biotechnology sector, and she brings a really strong combination of scientific expertise and deep domain knowledge and a real passion for enterprise architecture and digital innovation, which I would say is really very important for that type of project. She has spent the last 12 years in Roche Research IT, supporting research and early development labs with the lab environment like in LIMS, ELNs, and workflow solutions. And today she's co-lead in the LabEx program, which is focused, as we mentioned, replacing legacy ELN and LIMS platforms. And she's known also for a kind of a leadership style built on collaboration, transparency, and really believing in strong teams drive sustainable results, which I can really say is one of the success factor and driver of our project. And I think with that, the stage is yours.
Okay, yep. Thank you very much, Claudia, for the nice introduction. Welcome the people in the room and also online. So I can't see how many there are online, but all good. Yeah, right. And yeah, thanks to wega in general to giving me the opportunity to present this today. Yeah, the topic of my talk is modernizing biology labs, architecture choices, and change at scale. So the outline is that, I mean, first I will provide some context, in general, but also then on this LabEx program. Then I focus on the architecture, why it had to change, and also explain a bit the target architecture. Yeah, I will then also talk about how you actually can execute such a project, and then share some reflections, you know, lessons learned, this kind of stuff, and also some key takeaways. So with the context, so we are in pharma research and development, and we are in the biology labs. And those labs have really a high pressure. So we need more productivity, and this means we need faster discovery at a lower cost. So to accelerate research, we need to make sure that the labs can actually execute their experiments efficiently, and also that you can then do very fast decisions after the lab experiments. So people need access to the experimental data. And it's nowadays not only humans, but also machines that need to access this data. Now, the reality, and maybe some of you can relate to that, the reality in biology labs is often that you still have kind of aging ELN or LIMS platforms. And in a lot of cases, those come with, I would say, very rigid user interfaces. And in some cases, user interfaces are also not very intuitive. The lab workflow support and also automation are often limited. And I think that's actually the biggest issue, that often you lack proper programmatic data access, which makes it difficult to use the data for machines. Replacement can be challenging. So often you have like monolithic or tightly coupled systems, In some cases, when you're working with a vendor, you might even have kind of a vendor lock-in. And yeah, as a result, modernization often means that you have a multi-year or also multi-million program to really change the vendor and tool landscape. Now, LabEx is such a modernization program. And what we really have as a task is to modernize those biology labs, but without interrupting science. So we really need to take care that business runs as usual. And that's also quite a constraint, of course. And yeah, so our task is also to now move away from actually one really big ELN LIMS system to a more streamlined experiment management. What that means in terms of numbers is that we need to deal with more than 1,000 scientists that are, yeah, if you look at the value chain, they are from early research to early development. And yeah, also, as we have used the previous platform for quite some time, we have actually more than 10 years of data on that platform. And we have, and I think that's the biggest challenge for us, we have more than 1,500 digital workflows implemented to support those labs on that platform. Yeah, this is just a very rough overview on the project. So we started out in late 2022 with a little pre-project to actually phrase the demand. And the project is, we plan to run it until end of 2027. So we are still in the middle of it. Yeah, I would say, I mean, it's a very common project structure. So you have this kind of pre-project, then you have an initiation, product discovery phase, and now we're in delivery and also rollout phase. And at some point, of course, you need to clean up the whole thing as well. For me, the 2023 was really the most exciting year, I have to say, because this is what I call actually the year of decisions. This is when we really had to think about our future, basically. And we decided then that we want to go away from this one platform that we currently have, from this one ELN LIMS combination system, so that we really want to go to an ecosystem. The next decision that we actually took is that in this ecosystem, so this electronic lab notebook is actually only for note-taking. And I think this is, something that also is very important to think about, the components and their positioning then within this ecosystem. And the ELN was our first priority. So that's why we also then selected this product first. And by end of 2023, we actually got then our new ELN solution. And in case you're curious, it's the Revity Signals ELN. And yeah, now we are actually onboarding people onto that solution already. So now, I mean, a lot of people ask, of course, why architecture had to change. Why are you doing that? And I mean, I think we just had a lot of experience now with 10, 15 years on that platform. And what we saw is simply that biology is very, very complex. And you saw that we have more than, that we really have hundreds of processes in these biology labs. And one single platform just cannot handle this. It's a bit unrealistic to expect it. So what we see is that the experiments people do in the lab, they vary widely. So, I mean, we have labs that do biologics productions, right? We have labs that do high throughput screening assays. We have labs that do in vivo studies. So always very different kind of work. Also, then the scale varies a lot. You have labs doing very low throughput experiments. Others do high throughput experiments. Yeah, then depending on the lab, you have these people that just do experiments once, and then you have those that repeat them every other day, every week, right? So also here we have a difference. The other thing is if you look at the experimental phases, so the experiment design, preparation, the wet lab part where we actually execute the experiment, and then the data capture and analysis part, and then maybe the reporting. I mean, yeah, each of these phases has different requirements. And also here we see that, we might have, we want to have more tools and flexibility in the future. Yeah, and last not least, what we also see is, especially if you're working with a vendor, you're really dependent then on the vendor in case you want to adapt to new technologies. And you all know, I mean, generative AI is now really taking off, and you want to do that fast and not wait for the vendor. I think this is also a large driver for going towards an ecosystem. Yeah, I mean, once we had agreed on that we really want to have an ecosystem, we were also thinking on, what are the kind of design principles? And I think really one big thing is that we have fit for purpose tools. So meaning different groups have different needs, and we want to support that. Still, if you have an ecosystem, you don't want to end up with an endless zoo of applications. So still try to reuse as much as possible to limit the number of tools, because you still need to manage the complexity. I think the next one, it's really our users. I mean, they were a bit afraid that if they now get multiple tools in the future instead of one, that they have to somehow navigate across those tools. And to address that fear, we said that the future ecosystem, it somehow needs to have a way that people can navigate in a seamless way across those applications. And the next one is actually very related to this. So tool integration is key. And that means, I mean, if you want to have a seamless experience between applications, it means that you need to transfer data, that you maybe also need to guide users from one application to the next. And this requires that you also have a good programmatic access to allow then easy integration. And this just means that if you're designing or buying a system, you need to consider this. And this is really what we look for when checking for a new tool. And as I already said, we have a lot of digital workflows in the labs to support their work. And so another wish by our customer base was really that we also deliver those digital workflows in a faster fashion. Now, the expected benefits that we see actually with the ecosystem approach is that you're more future-proof and that you can also continuously modernize. I mean, I think seeing a program like LabEx where you need to go for a 5 years program with a multi-million investment, that's a big risk, right? And it also means you're really slow. So in the future, we want to avoid these kind of mega projects and rather, adapt smaller parts of our landscape and do this in a more continuous way. So that's, I mean, just reducing the risk. Also, it means that if you have then these composable and replaceable capabilities, that you really can evolve each component individually. You can just bring in also innovative components, right? So you can accelerate your innovation. You can encapsulate your business complexity. I think that's also a driver. And we hope to address this ask for faster delivery of workflows as well with that. Now, I want to be honest. So there are some trade-offs that we actually had to accept. And if you transition from this one size fits all kind of system to an ecosystem approach where you have then multiple tools, apps, around. This really introduces also complexity in terms of communication, in terms of governance, and also if you then think about operations. So this is something to keep in mind. I mean, for communication, it's just way simpler if you tell your customers, you know, this is the system we will onboard you on, and that's it. It's a bit more difficult to tell them, you know, we have an ecosystem and we will work with you. We can't tell you right now which is the component that you will use. Yeah, then in terms of governance, that's exactly that. I mean, you need to work with the users to understand what they need and then recommend basically the part of the ecosystem that's helpful for them. In some cases, yeah, we also then need to buy maybe or build a new component if the capability they need is not yet covered by the current tool set. Yeah, so this really requires this kind of selection process, and this is of course also yeah, some kind of overhead. And in terms of operations, you need to think about that. Okay, you need to operate the individual tools, but because you integrate the tools also very tightly in some cases, you need to make sure you're somehow covering the integrations between the tools as well. So this is then sometimes forgotten. So you really need to operate the whole ecosystem and not only the individual tools. Now, coming to the target architecture, and here let's first just recap on the experiment lifecycle, then think about the capabilities we need to support that on a high level, and then I can a bit explain on how that can look like in an ecosystem. So yeah, say standard experiment, in our case, it usually starts with a request, maybe from a drug project team, and then the lab goes ahead and designs and prepares the experiment. So preparation is, for example, if you order materials, you book your instruments, this kind of stuff. Then the lab people will execute the experiment. They will acquire and analyze the results. In a lot of cases, they will also share the data for decision making. Often in our domain, that's the drug project teams. And yeah, what you also then need to make sure in the end is that each experiment it's compliantly archived also. So for intellectual property protection, but also in case like for regulatory purposes for the FDA or so, we need to ensure that we have a long-term retention of the experiments. Now, if we think about now the capabilities we need for that, let's start with the last one, the compliance and archive. So we use our ELN, so electronic lab notebook for that. I mean, an ELN is designed for that to actually ensure compliance. And we really use this for note-taking only. So what I mean with that is that if we do digital workflow support, that's not happening in the ELN. So this happens elsewhere. We have that need, and for really doing digital workflow support for the people in the lab, we actually have a separate capability, which we call fit for purpose workflows, LIMSs, really depending on the lab, what they need. It's tightly coupled to the next one, which is fit for purpose result data management. And in most cases, this also includes analysis and visualization of the results. And we actually need a lot of supporting capabilities. So I only mention a few here, like, you know, you see in the first step that people request the experiment, right? So you need to manage requests. You maybe also need to manage requests for material and this kind of stuff. So this is something that people need. In pharma, you also, of course, need to manage compounds, samples in general, cells, instruments, materials in general. So these are kind of supporting capabilities that you need. And then, of course, people need a way to search. And some labs also need reporting Okay, and if we look at our current situation, we have this ELN LIMS platform that has it all in a box, kind of. So you have the ELN. We have some capability to configure workflows. Yeah, customization is limited. We also have a way to manage and analyze and visualize results. Also here, I mean, the customization is limited. The ELN LIMS platform, to some extent, it has these supporting capabilities, like managing requests or tasks. You could even manage compounds and cells there, but yeah, we are not using that. And then, yeah, you can obviously search, and there's also some very limited reporting capability in that box. You also have some identity and access management, just not to forget that one as well, and master data management. Now, if you go to an ecosystem, we actually break that up. So meaning it's no longer within a box, but we really have individual tools for each of these bars, basically. In some cases, we even have multiple tools. So if we go from top to bottom, start with the ELN. So we have one ELN, so that's simple. And then for the workflows and LIMS, we really have a lot. So this is where you get the variety. The same is true for the analysis tools. Also here, yeah, as biology is very diverse and the results they generate is very diverse, we need different kind of analysis tools here. For these supporting capabilities, managing requests, compound cells, I'm very lucky and happy because either it's already there as individual components, or it's being built by other initiatives. So that's not part of the program. But yeah, we of course need to track the dependencies. And yeah, to allow searching and reporting, this is also something, yeah, where we still need to work on. And yeah. Of course, you also need to think then on how you do the common identity and access management in an ecosystem. So because it needs then to go across all the components. So I think this is also important to understand. And also a master data management. This is then a separate components which all other components need to refer to. And also here I'm lucky because we had that already at the beginning of the project. Okay, so as this is still a bit abstract, I thought I'd just bring Ivy, Michael, and Warren with me. And these are basically people working in different labs. And they just explain on how they will work with this ecosystem. I think if you, it's maybe to understand it, it's maybe good to think about, okay, how does the respective persona show that the workflows are fitting to the needs? How do they do the compliant documentation in the ELN? And also, how do they actually capture the key data and link it to the experiment? So let's start with Ivy. So she's a scientist working really in a very exploratory fashion. She works in a disease translational area. And that means she just does something different every day, basically. So if she runs kind of an exploratory assay, she just will document that directly in the ELN. So for her, the main workhorse is the ELN, very simple. And in this ELN, she has a very simple template, and this template just reminds her to capture the purpose of the experiment, material, methods, results, conclusions. I mean, what you would typically document. Also, the template will ask her for like the key assay context. So in our case, that's usually the target, cells, compounds, and then we'll validate against the respective systems in the ecosystem. So in our case, we have a target management system, a compound management system, a cell management system. And like this, we ensure a reliable linking between these systems in the ecosystem and the ELN record, which is our representing the experiment in our ecosystem. Yeah, and of course, this kind of key data that she notes down, it also helps her then to find back the experiments and filter for targets, compounds, and so on. So, yeah. Now, Michael is working in a different way. He works on optimizing assays for high throughput screening, and then he will also conduct the high throughput screening. So for the first part, optimizing the assay development, optimizing the assay for the high throughput screening, he has a custom built solution so that he can just track all the different conditions he is testing and in the end select the best condition. And then when he runs this assay on the high throughput conditions, he needs to have a tool to really handle the high throughput. So he needs to have a very performant tool to do the analysis and all of that. In the end, the data is automatically documented in the ELN from both systems to enable compliance. And the key data, like, for example, in this case, the optimized assay protocol, the assay conditions, and also the results, they are kept in a structured fashion and also linked to the experiment. Sorry. And yeah, our last example is Marvin, again, working in a different kind of lab. So he's really working in antibody development. And so he just has to work with a lot of systems and also devices. And he doesn't want to, go to each individual app and also the device, but he just wants to have a workflow basically which guides him across these applications and also the device. And yeah, so he has this workflow which he can use, and he doesn't need to switch to the individual apps and so on. In the end, the data that is captured in this workflow will be stored in the electronic lab notebook. So meaning also like this, he has kind of compliance by design, and he doesn't need to care too much about it. The key data that's in this case is like these developed antibodies. You, of course, want to keep that. They are kept in a structured fashion, proper fashion in our compound management system, and then also linked to the experiment. So in the end, then, how this kind of works is that, Ivy, Michael, and Marvin, they use very different tools, actually, and have different user interfaces, or primary user interfaces, I would say. The key data, actually, ideally, all key experimental data ends up in the ELN so that we are covered for intellectual property protection and compliance. But yeah, we also have key data in further tools, especially the strongly structured data, or if it's data that's maybe also too big for the notebook. And we link then these tools to the ELN or the data in there. So in the end, the ELN also serves as kind of a hub for experimental data across the tools. Now, I want to leave the architecture and go to the execution to also get a bit into that topic. And show a bit the LabEx program setup. So I would say what's maybe a bit unusual is that we actually have a co-leadership. And unfortunately, the co-lead is not here today. She's on maternity leave, but yeah, usually we work together, and then there's a split between the electronic lab notebook and this more workflow part. And we also, as you saw, we have quite some architectural questions. So we work in strong alignment with the architecture, and we do this by having the architecture actually embedded in the project. Due to the large amount of work, we actually have a largely externalized delivery. So really everything like technical coordination, business analysis, development testing, and so on is outsourced. Our change management, we do that mostly directly with the business. So meaning that we have business representatives in the project that help doing the change in the respective areas. Overall, the program has the kind of long-term vision, and then we break that down into annual goals to help people, to know what they need to work towards. And we also have what works very well. We have a steering committee with a strong business representation, which is really helpful for escalation if we have issues in one area or so, and also for sponsoring. I want to also, go maybe to three challenges that we have in terms of scale in that project. So one is around this electronic lab notebook, where we went into our globalization. I will explain a bit more on the next slide. Then this transitioning of the 1,500 workflows. And then, we have more than 1,000 users. So how we really manage this change across the whole research and actually early development as well. Right. So for the electronic lab notebook, we actually started out relatively small. So with actually what we call Roche Pharma Research and Early Development, in short, PRED, and they're the biology labs. So these are these 1,000 users, roughly a bit more, that I've been talking about. Then as I explained initially, 2023, we had all these decisions and finally had the decision for the future ELN. And then we were basically ready to get into the delivery and rollout. And then actually Roche made the decision to have a unified ELN across R&D and then actually even diagnostics. So diagnostics already was on this ELN. So it was then more like that we as the PRED biology would join that, and actually a lot of other organizational parts as well. So then not only research and development, which then is not only the biology part, but also the chemistry part, and not only Roche, but also our partner organization Genentech and a few smaller ones as well. So you see that there's a lot of branches basically. And so the idea is that all of these organizations should onboard onto the exact same tenant. So really the exact same system, same instance, however you want to call that. And it's still the Signals ELN. The nice thing about that was that that it was already there. There was already a team running it by Group IT. So but I guess you can see that the challenge that to coordinate this. And this is what we also saw pretty soon, right? It's really a huge scope, and we had to somehow think about on how we can split LabEx and this then global ELN team that formed at that time. And so we more or less set it up in that way that this LabEx program would really care about the users and this PRED focus, and really work with the users on the business analysis and providing the feature requests to this global ELN team. And we also take care of the user onboarding. So because we're really close to the people, they sit in Basel or Penzberg or so. This global ELN team, it has more this focus on extending the ELN according to the needs of the different organization. So they do the feature development. They also will work with the issue management. And yeah, they also, until recently, had really this task to align and prioritize across the groups, because yeah, you can think about that. Sometimes there might be also different or conflicting requirements. For diagnostics, it has a separate capacity and a separate prioritization. I mean, that's just too different from the others. So we decided that early that this can stay separate. Yeah, as I said, the platform is run by our group IT, so adding a further partner basically to the overall mix. And yeah, so then we really had to learn on how you can do that, because yeah, I mean, you need to find together if you're working with so many teams, right? So I think what we learned is really it's important to align early on, especially as we had a 4-month product cadence. Yeah, you need to have really a high-level sequencing across the organization so that really people know what's the priorities. You need to do obviously a good capacity planning so that you can do that at scale and also do the parallel feature delivery in time. And especially for us, as we have this ecosystem focus and we rely on integrations, we had to learn that, yeah, there was a governed process by our group IT on how we can integrate. So yeah, we need to also here start early that we meet then our delivery timelines. So a lot of process questions and so on, of course, and just see on how that works. The bottom line is really that this takes time. And this is also why we then said we really need dedicated resources for this, and tried and started to split and have this co-leadership. Good. So going to the next topic, this is the 1,500 workflows. And I mean, how can you transition those? I mean, for us, the focus is on value, and we really worked with the business to prioritize. I mean, some of them were also obsolete in the meantime. So, I mean, in the end, we had around now, or we have around 420 workflows to transition. That's still a lot. And actually for our research IT, that's too much in terms of budget. So we asked to the areas, especially those with a lot of workflows, to co-fund this exercise. And yeah, they actually agreed. We also try to consolidate now, going over all the workflows. You have this opportunity to really look closely and try to really harmonize as much as possible. And then working with this ecosystem, of course, we try to reuse as much as possible as well. We also we have a workflow engine which is called AutoLab, and also here we try to modularize this to make it easier and faster to build these workflows more in a brick-like fashion. So this is also something where we had to invest in the foundations, I would say, to make it easier. And then we share the work a bit with our areas, especially our large molecule research has a lot of those workflows, and they have even a known workflow developers community. So they take over that part internal, and then it's partly outsourced, and they run this as a separate stream basically. So they do the transition on their own, aligning just with us. And yeah, the other areas, they transition directly with our LabEx program team. And yeah, in the end, it just means you need to build up some kind of engine, as I call it. So you need to establish a team and a transfer process. And I mean, this took us really a year or so to onboard all the people and to train them and to also reach a smooth delivery cadence. So it's not done from today to tomorrow. Yeah, and now we are in the middle of it. With respect to change, I said we have more than these 1,000 people, and also going from a one one-fits-all solution to an ecosystem. It's more difficult to explain. So what we try is really to have a continuous involvement of the scientists, but also their management. So and really have the different levels covered. And I think especially in those areas where we have a lot of workflows and the ecosystem is more complex than for the people, we have dedicated business representatives that help with the change management. Yeah, and I also think it's really important to have the business involved in the key decisions. So for example, for this ELN selection, we obviously did this with people from the business, so that looked at the different ELNs and gave their feedback and so on. Also for the prioritization of which workflows get transitions and which ones, we don't transition, we involved the business. And then even now on the really smaller level for the individual workflow, we have the workflow owner involved so that they really are fine with the new solution. So you kind of do the change already in the process, which is very helpful. In the end, I think despite all stakeholder management that you can do and also have to do, I mean, a program really needs to deliver to keep the trust. I think that's what we see a lot. But now just to wrap things up, I want to share a few reflections on the program. So, I mean, I think what worked is really this co-leadership that worked out very well. Also our business buy-in and commitment, and also co-funding the whole exercise. I think it's also important for the business to really think about, I mean, is it important for us or not, and so on. And this just sharpens the thinking around that. Then aligning on the design principles and also the overall architecture first. I think that's very important. And I mean, really all the stakeholders, they need to understand that a digital transformation, which that really is, takes time and resources and also budget. Yeah, so it's a big thing. For this ELN globalization, I have actually a separate lessons learned, because I think that was really quite interesting. So, I mean, as you saw that we had to bring a lot of different organizations onto one platform. And I mean, it just means that also the people they are different scientific domains, different organizations, they come with their own culture, they come from their own current situation, their own ELN LIMS solution, which is different from maybe ours, right? So their change journey is very different. And you need to consider this, so you cannot have this all in one global program, but you really should have like separate streams or projects or whatever, however you set that up for, I mean, just making sure that each organization has its own change journey and is managed accordingly. What we also learned or had to learn is that aligning on one tool doesn't mean that everyone has a similar idea on how to use this tool, especially like an electronic lab notebook, which you can still use in different ways, right? You also need to first align on how to use it. So, I mean, and the main question we had was really, do we use it as an ELN only, or do we want to implement workflows within this notebook and the extent we want to do that? So this was really something that we had to clarify. Then working with different organizations, you also find that people have different digital maturity and also expectations. So, I mean, if you think about governance, for example, right? If you, some people are more sloppy about it, others are less sloppy, right? So this then, some people just want to be more autonomous, others want to have more governance. So you also need to find a balance. And the other thing is that when you do globalization, I think in general, you're balancing the benefits of scales, of course. I mean, that's why you do it. But there's also a huge effort required for alignment. Yeah. So, and this in the end means that you also should do deliberate choices on what to align on. So maybe common vocabulary, do we want to have common templates, this kind of stuff, or not, right? So I think it's really worth thinking about what you want to align on. Okay. Now, just as the key takeaways, I think that in the end, the goal of this program is not to have only a modern lab IT landscape, but to really have a continuously modernizable one. Yeah, for me, I would say the business buy-in and commitment is key because, yeah, without that, you will fail very likely. The ecosystem architecture can support this continuous modernization, but yeah, must be intentional. As I explained, there are also some, yeah, things to consider. And yeah, modernization is really a marathon and not a sprint. Yeah, and with that, I would like to thank wega Informatik for the invitation. Yeah, Claudia for supporting the business analysis, and yeah, also our sponsors for their support, the project team and user community for all their contributions to the project. Yeah, and also thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, so I think now maybe there's a next slide, I think. For the questions.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So maybe there were a few questions coming in during the presentation.
Sure.
So maybe we can start with that and then leave it to the audience to maybe add some additional questions. So we have Karim asking how many people worked or still are working at the project and what is the profile landscape of that people, so the skill set.
Yes. Okay. So, I mean, currently our, I would say, external workforce is around 20, 25 people. So it depends a bit on how you count. But we also have, of course, all the internal people contributing. So then for each area, so you probably have another 10 or so that really are working very regularly with the project. And then, yeah, you have even more people doing the change. So that's a bit more spread out. So I don't usually count them for the project. But yeah. And with respect to the skill set, I mean, yeah, we have a lot of business analysts, I would say, because we need to understand what the people need. And yeah, as we need to do workflow development, we have, yeah, I mean, developers basically. So mostly nowadays that's Python. Yeah, and we also need some people that do kind of more architecture, technical coordination tasks. So there we also have a few. Yeah, and for the change, we have mostly the business people and the business analysts, they help with that as well.
And there was also a quite similar question, I think, from Roy Seiler. It was more kind of, do you have a separate group team to support the business? And how do you handle so many users' requests?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we have the business analysts that really capture the requirements, right? And we have a Java, basically, a tracking system for the requests. And yeah, then you go just step by step, I would say. So.
Okay. And also Roy is asking about if it's possible to have some more vendor information on the architecture, to know which tools, vendors.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe offline or so I can give a bit more information.
So we can actually then answer on that question with the kind of survey we send out or get direct contact about that. Okay. Then we also have another question from Rita. It's is the workflow platform Autolab internally developed or a commercial vendor solution?
Yeah, so it's actually based on an open source software, which is called Camunda. but we have done then on top internal development for the user interface, and also so Camondo is actually a workflow system. So it's a business process modeling engine actually. So and all the customizations you need then to do for the individual steps that you run, that's then custom code. Yeah, it's Python.
Okay. Then the last one from the chat from Heiko. Why didn't you choose an ELN that can directly map the workflows as LES? You assuming that means laboratory execution system. Should the ELN be separated from the workflows LIMS? So here's a question why this decision was made.
Yeah, I think it really depends a bit on the size maybe of the company and how many processes you have, whether you put that in one system or not. But I think, we have kind of the decision, actually an executive decision, to have one ELN, right? And as we see that there are a lot of different kind of workflows, you would just limit yourself way too much if you would only now rely in this case on Revity, which is the vendor of the Signals ELN, to build workflows, right? It just wouldn't be possible. The capabilities of that platform, they are not there even. And this is just also what we saw with our previous solution, that the breadth of processes, it's too large for a single ELN LIMS solution. And yeah, we could have many, right? ELN LIMS solutions, but that's just not what we want to have overall. We want to have one ELN so that people have really one place where they can go and get all the experimental data.
Maybe also to add on that, reusability was also a big word while figuring out the ecosystem, to understand what is already there and what could be maybe reused or a bit repurposed or enlarged. Yes. So I think that also played quite a big role with the overall decision how to move forward.
That's correct.
Good. Then and also just a question coming in, if the goal of the project is to really host all key data in the ELN database or not.
No, I think that's a misunderstanding. So really you have part of the data in the ELN, but obviously for high throughput screens, for example, that would be way too much, right? So you have that then in the expert systems, LIMS systems, analysis systems, and you just have a link, basically. This is then how you find the data. Yeah.
So you mentioned master data management. You need to put the microphone.
Yeah. All good.
Just not clicking on the red button.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So follow up on that. You mentioned master data management. Was Kevin already said this is the basis there. So registration is also not happening. So you are using a Revity registry or not?
No.
Okay.
So yes, for each of our key entities, like our compounds, our cells, our targets, we have actually a separate registration system.
But normally these systems, then LIMS, ELN systems, have their database, which is also needed for productivity, no? So do they then kind of mirror that, or?
Yes, in these cases you would mirror. And usually, the registration system per se doesn't have a lot of process-specific details, whereas this would then reside in the LIMS, right? You just want to make sure that you have a global identifier for each entity, basically. Yes.
Thank you. Don't touch the bread.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Anke, for sharing your insight behind this program and the lessons learned. Very valuable. My name is Oscar Winker from BI, and I'm wondering, how do you measure the impact and success and return on investment behind this modernization program?
Yeah, that's a good question. We try to measure, of course. In principle, at the moment, we still have very simple KPIs, I would say. Just seeing on whether people adopt the system, so to see, are users onboarding? Are they using the workflows? How often do they use it? Also, we try to track the reuse. I think this is, for example, for this workflow engine, we can do this. We can see, I mean, how much of the code is reused, this kind of stuff. So yeah, this is the things we try to measure at the moment. I mean, in the future, of course, you could maybe think about something more sophisticated also in terms of in how far the data is reused and this kind of stuff. But yeah, you first need the data.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are questions in the chat too, if you want to. For the links, you need long-lasting links.
Yes.
How do you manage that?
Yes. So actually, Roche even globally has a system that allows to kind of make this kind of long-lasting links, right? So this is, I mean, you basically have a redirect that ensures that if you change like the instance or, you know, yeah, you don't break the links. Yeah, that's the. Yes, it's I mean, I think it's really a homemade Roche system, so that does it. Or actually, I think even beyond research and development. So yeah.
So there are a few more questions also on the chat. So one was about follow-up question of the hosting of the key data in the ELN database. It's kind of the question is ELN, if the ELN is used as search engine then, and mainly I think with the aim for the high throughput data.
So I mean, the ELN is only used on a high level, I would say, for the search to just find which experiment maybe deal with a certain target or for a certain project. And then if you want to know more, you would need to go to the individual limb system or whatever is really then used to capture the structured data or the majority of the data. So this is how I would say it. I mean, the ELN per se, it can only store structured data to a certain extent. It's not like meant for a lot of data. And so we keep it very high level. We just want to have the experiment and we link it to our key entities like our compounds, our cells, targets, projects, so that you can find the experiments of interest, and then you can dig deeper and really go to the expert systems. I mean, we also have, for example, and this is a bit beyond this program. I mean, it's been there before. We have a warehouse, for example, where people can put their assay results and do cross-assay analysis and this kind of stuff. So this is also there, and it's there in parallel. So for people that want to dig into results or so, we have a separate system. Yeah.
There's also another question related to the data. In which way you take care of the data you collected in the labs are ready for example, for modeling or AI usability?
So you mean the data that has been covered previous to this project, or yeah? So, I mean, the existing data, I mean, a lot of that is already, loaded to the warehouse. I mean, our assay data is loaded to our assay data warehouse. So that part is kind of covered. For the rest, I mean, we will just make it available, I guess, more or less in text files or so. That will be interesting, but yeah, we are not at that point yet. Yeah, not sure whether that does the question correctly.
In fact, you replied to the question. You said you have your research data hub for the entities and the final product, so that's where you can get the data.
Yeah.
And you have ways to drill down to the data if you need a specific data set for modeling. Yeah. So you have the whole chain and traceability.
Yes. Yeah, you can then use this dedicated data set. That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So can I ask also a little bit follow-up question? You mentioned that the one thing which you measure was how much people were reusing the code or workflows. And one of the stated goals was this productivity enhancement. Was there from the beginning any type of idea how to measure this? Because it's you know,
yeah, I mean,
not so obvious.
It's very, very tricky because in the end, I mean, it's usually also not one lab that contributes to the overall productivity. So the labs are kind of linked. And if you improve one workflow, it's maybe not even helping if it's not a bottleneck, right? So I think you rather need to look at the department level maybe and maybe a group of workflows, and then you can try to measure on that level whether you really get then a productivity increase kind of. If you can have more throughput, I would even say. So if like now they can do, I don't know, if you have a group doing antibodies and currently they have maybe they can do 10 per month and then in the future it's 15 or so. But I think it's on the individual workflow, it will be difficult. We will need to look at the... Yes. Mm.
And the cross different.
Yeah, because I mean, often the labs are, I mean, working together. So it's also a bit difficult to know if one workflow now really has an impact on the overall productivity, right? So I think what you could do is look at a group of workflows in the labs that really work together and then see whether overall the productivity increases. Yeah, but it's really difficult to measure. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, quite a big project, and you mentioned a couple of times stakeholder management,
Yes.
and you seem to involve on business level. You had your representative and so forth. I mean, one question that comes to mind. I mean, change doesn't necessarily come natural, and if we're looking at it from stakeholder alignment, what was your biggest challenge and how did you overcome that challenge?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, we have, for example, we have a big department, our large molecule research. They are, I mean, on one side, and yeah, I mean, just of course motivating this department to do the change and so on. But also here, I mean, really getting in touch with the people on site and working with them, getting them convinced that this is the way to go, and then actually letting them owning this change. I think this is the way it works, because once they start to own it, yeah, it's just working. But yeah, initially that can be difficult, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe add on that, we really did a lot of user interviews. Being on site helps to really sit together, visit them on site to actually address these issues and helping them to move forward. Yeah, I think you. Okay.
Hi, I have a question. For example, if you take the microassay development example, how far or how close is the workflow to the actual data readout? So how much is the required to file drop data one time?
Okay, so for one-time experiments, I would say, I mean, people will do it manually because then we are usually not supporting this. But if you have assays that don't run more often, right, and then you think it makes sense to support it with a digital workflow, yeah, then I mean, we then have also, of course, still different degree of automation, right, or support. So it really depends on the individual case, how far you go. And in the end, it's a bit cost-benefit, analysis, I would say. Yeah.
Thanks.
You also have a question.
Yeah.
But regarding the KPIs, or measuring the success, what was actually triggering the project? Because maybe it was actually not pain points from the lab, maybe it was maintainability, and so then the measurability.
Yes.
May not. You may have to show that the stakeholders in the labs are not more pissed than they were, but that is not really driving, and then it's maybe now you have easier maintainability or cost savings. So what was actually the key driver? Where did was it initiated?
Yes. So I would say the very initial driver was actually that this platform, ELN LIMS platform that we had, it just got out of life cycle. So the vendor doesn't want to support it any longer. So yeah, I mean, and to ensure compliance, we need to basically move off this platform now in a certain time range, right? And then I think during the project, I mean, there came this additional driver on top that really Roche, as per executive decision, wants to have this one ELN. So this kind of reinforced this move to a new ELN anyways. So I think we have also, and of course here, the idea that people can collaborate better across the organization and also the operational cost savings and so on.
Okay, so in this case, if that was the intention, then for example, it could also be, how many people from San Francisco are actually now working with data from Basel and the other way around.
Yeah, exactly. Once we get the collaboration use cases really there, yes, these are the things. Yeah, but yeah.
You mentioned that there were two challenges in modernizing these older systems. One was that they were monolithic, or there was tight coupling of these systems, and another one was the vendor lock-in. How successful do you think you have been now in modernizing it to prevent this from becoming a bottleneck again in the future?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think we use much less vendors, so we really are a bit more free now. And for the key things like our workflow engine, we built this on open source, and we own the code then of the rest, right? Also now the code is like, for example, in Python, so you can easily analyze this with, modern Gen AI, right? And I think also if you want to transition away from that or so, you are in a much better position to do this in a, let's say, AI supported fashion. So you need less personnel. I mean, for other things, we still work with a vendor, but then it's more isolated. It's a smaller pieces. So also in this case, I would say it's just, I mean, easier to exchange that tool then, yeah.
Thank you.
Is there also one additional question coming from the chat? Need my glasses. So it's also related more to the team size. So how big is your architecture team, and what focus areas were the responsibility split? So solution, system, data, and what tools do you maintain your architecture documentation? So this kind of permanent documentation versus project transitional design documentation.
Yeah, I mean, so in general, initially of pharma research and early development, a group that had just an architectural group. We are currently going more global, so we will even have one that's then spanning more. But when we did those decisions, we had simply a larger group of architects, and then 2-3 of these architects just worked in the project. I mean, not full time, but really, I mean, as needed. And I mean, currently we have 2 architects just working with us on on architectural questions. In terms of documentation, I mean, we have we just have a system where we put the architectural decision record, so the architects do that. And for, I would say, for example, our applications or so, we have a repository where we keep that and the application related information. So yeah, so it's a bit spread. Yeah.
Okay. Here another question in the room.
I don't need to press any over there. Okay, perfect. This is green. Green means go. So thank you for the presentation. I have a question kind of coming back to the change management piece.
Yes.
Curious about what the trainings look like. So do you have specific certification process for people? How long does the training look like? Do you have a combination of on-site and kind of live training? you segmented by different persona, right? Ivy, Martin, all of those different names. How does it look like in general, and how do you measure adoption? Is it just curious. And what are the challenges there more broadly?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for now we have, I would say most data on onboarding people on the electronic lab journal, because we started with these Ivy type of people, so meaning people that do a lot of one-off assays, so they are easy to onboard, right? Because they have only the ELN. And I mean, there we went group by group initially, and now as we have onboarded then most of these groups, I mean, we just have regular trainings. We help people also with kind of drop-in sessions. So if they have questions, you know, they can come to these drop-in sessions, they get help. We have a support channel basically where they can ask questions, I mean, whenever they need to. And in terms of trainings, I mean, we just have a kind of videos or so initially, so people can already get familiar with the tool. And then we offer some kind of more Q&A session where we also just hint to the most important things again, and people can ask questions. So I think this is kind of mixed. So people can do a bit of self-paced learning, but then also have an interaction basically with people they can ask questions to. And I mean, now we are really also going into this workflow rollouts. And I mean, then this will be really also go lab by lab. I mean, you really need to do this piece by piece.
If I might do a quick follow-up.
Yeah.
So what, kind of coming back to what does a successful rollout mean? Is it a certain percentage of people using it? Because we've seen, I'm sure, like there's people minimal effort to stay compliant, whatever it is, or is it that depends further downstream of the line that can kind of validate that they've captured the relevant information? What does it look like out of
I mean, we actually have kind of these kind of KPI measurements on different levels. So I mean, the team, we first just measure, are people adopting the systems by, I mean, how many experiments do they create? How many users that are trained are actually using the system, this kind of stuff. But then we actually have a group that makes sure that the data recorded in the ELN has a certain standard. And this is even reported to our leadership team biannually. So this means that really at the moment, it's still a manual process. We try to automate this a bit more, but it's really that people in each area, you have representatives that need to check biannually on, I mean, just random records on whether the guidelines that are out there are adhered to. So, and then they basically have report to our leadership team. So it's really the compliance and IP, intellectual property protection, it's rated quite high, I would say. Yeah. So we do quality checking. Yeah.
Hold it, So my understanding is that you're only putting in new data, or do you also put in some legacy data, which may be very different to how your whole architecture, your master data is set up?
Yes.
How would you manage that?
Yes. I mean, to be honest, I don't think that we will do really a migration. You're fully correct in that. I mean, that the cost-benefit ratio, I think, would be not very good. So, I mean, what we just want to ensure is that the data from the legacy system will be accessible and searchable. And maybe we even want to, I mean, we haven't really gotten into that too far, but the one idea is that we maybe also just use GenAI to enhance it a bit, so to make it better searchable and so on. So this is the idea. And of course, for compliance, we also need to archive it anyways, right? So, but the archive might not be the most nice thing to search in. So maybe we need an additional solution for that, please.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alexandra Heinrich from Roche as well. My question is around actually, how do you, what is your approach to integrating acquired companies? We do acquire currently quite a lot. I mean, And we do have labs in those companies, and it's always very exciting to see what they do.
Yes.
But they are, of course, a separate company. So what's your approach here? What is your ambition, really?
Yeah, I mean, I personally I did not really integrate with a company, but I mean, usually what I see is that I mean, you need to understand their use cases, business cases, needs in terms of systems, but in generally, I mean, they should onboard on the systems then we have on joint systems, basically. Yeah, I mean, for the ELN, I know that, I mean, those acquired companies, they should also then record into this notebook. So, but this also always requires a little separate project because, yeah, I mean, also there you have to have the change management. You need to ensure that the relevant data is there, all this kind of stuff. So it's really always a project, basically, to do that. Yeah.
There are no further questions online so far. Any questions still here in the room? I think last question. No, I think we kind of said if you have some further question coming up later, also feel free to reach out to us or directly to Anke. So I think we will also share her email, but it's quite simple. It's anke.eisenmann@roche.com.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay if they just reach out to you directly.
Sure. No, please do.
Yeah. So then I would say thank you for your attention and big thank you for you, Anke, to be here today and share your experience and lessons learned. Yeah. And we also have a tiny sweet present from you to remember this day.
Yes. Thank you very much.
I think there might still be some Gipfeli and coffee around. So if you still have some time to stay here, exchange, also talk directly to Anke or also me if it's from the project, then we're happy to spend a little bit more time with you. So thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Das ist nett.